as the case may be.
It's 10 o'clock.
Like I said, I give it a couple minutes and then we'll get started.
One question. So I took minutes last time, but
Yes.
in the data tracker, it doesn't actually like list them.
Oh, I haven't included them yet.
Right out.
So
they need to be extra. Okay, fair enough.
Did you take them and send them to me, or did you use the notepad tool?
I used the note-taking tool, and I kind of assumed that it would then take care of everything else.
I'll have to double check to make sure that it ended up there, but if not, you ought to be able to find it somewhere. And if I can't find it, I'll contact you. But yeah, so once you make them, then to get them actually posted as official minutes, I need to click a button, and I hadn't done that. I was actually just going to do that, and figured I'd just wait.
That makes total sense. Okay, thanks.
All right.
Hello.
Morning.
Quite the flurry of activity on the repo.
I was like, way to go.
Busy.
Merged.
3 months of activity in like 2 days.
Sometimes that's how it happens.
Well, in fairness, Infinitus, there was a bunch of waiting for Paul's review, and then we just cleared it all out. Cleared all Paul's reviews comments out.
All right. Well, I'll give everybody another minute, and then we'll get going. Some of the people missing, it's awful early for them. So, well, maybe not awful early. Am I kidding? 7 o'clock Pacific time. It's not that bad. All right, it's 3 after. I think it's time to get started. Again, thanks for dialing in at whatever hour it is where you are. This is an official meeting of the IETF. So it's an IETF MLS meeting. I just want to do the note well. A lot of this is about IPR. I think I've seen everyone at one of these meetings before, so these shouldn't be new. This is one of those deals. If you say something, you got to submit. If you don't, and I find out about it, I will, which is actually what I did in the past. There's also some stuff about personal conduct, etc. Luckily, this working group's not had any of those problems, so that's good. But if you want to know anything about these, feel free to click on these. I'll put them in the meeting repo at some point. If you have any other questions, you can also ask me. All right, what is next? Status. Code of conduct. This is all treat everybody with respect. Try to speak slowly. Limit the use of slang. Dispute ideas by using reasoned argument. Best engineering judgment. Best solution for the whole of the internet. And contribute. All right. What else? Let's do the whole thing. We're basically here still. The whole timeline, we had a feature freeze, we had a working group last call, the AD's done some review, and then we're kind of here. We're basically kind of at the same point with both the protocol and the architecture document. And we're about looking like we're going to be ready to send a clean document forward to IETF last call, which typically lasts 2 weeks. Because of the holidays, I suspect it might go 4. So mid-January is probably what it's up to Paul, but who's our area director, to decide how long he wants it to be. But that seems pretty normal. Or he might wait to start till the first of the new year. I'm not really sure what he's going to do, but then after that, when we kind of like kick off a bunch of other director reviews, so you'll see some reviews come in, and sometimes they're good, and sometimes they're not good, and sometimes they're purely editorial. Basically, just roll with the punches. Because at the end of all that, we'll try to make sure that all the director comments are addressed before it goes to ISG review, no matter how small they are, because the area directors from the other areas use those director reviews to make their comments and discusses, and not addressing them just lengthens the process. So it's better to just deal with them. All right, that's it for the preamble. We got 2 documents that were really on tap, and then we have others we can talk about if we have time. Do you guys want to do the protocol document first, or do you want to do the architecture document first?
Let's go over to the architecture document. There's nothing open on that at this point. When I went to bed last night, there were a couple of things open but then Benjamin got up early on EU time and merged a bunch of stuff. But maybe click over to the pull requests and the recently closed ones, just to review for folks. Kind of the highlights of the AD review. Let's see. So
those are all minor.
166 and 167 were the 2 big ones.
These 2?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they were big in terms of size of number of changes, but I think they were all pretty localized and kind of warranted fixes. Yeah. The one I was going to highlight was the kind of multi-device privacy one.
Yeah, that was definitely the one that he said that he was most interested in. Which one is that one?
So that was
that's
one of the latest that I merged, right? That's
that's the one.
Privacy.
Yes, that's 169.
169, yes.
169.
There we go. All right. Yep.
Yeah.
So it was actually quite trivial and mostly editorial. Like there was nothing that we didn't discuss before. The only change I made actually when I fixed some remark after Eckert made a comment that this was not a device. It was actually not a device level authentication, but it was a client level authentication. So I fixed that. But apart from that, it's basically a very, very simple thing. I also added the recommendation that's on the bottom right below the comment resolved, which is to avoid sharing cryptographic state as much as possible, because basically if you do that, you are shooting yourself in the foot, because people, like, an attacker can have control over one device and then give itself control over the keys of other devices. So that's pretty bad. Apart from that, like, you can read the text, it's very, very uncontroversial. And generally, I mean, all the changes requested by Paul were mostly editorial clarification. Since there is nothing actually normative in that document, it's also much easier to actually solve those problems.
Yeah, but those minor editorial things are going to help the readability of the document and the people who are coming at this cold. So I think that the document ended up in a better spot for it. So
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a long, you could reread that document. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna do another full pass over the entire document, because sometimes we, like, with those many editorial changes, we actually introduce duplications or things like this. But there is going to be anyway nothing that's going to really move. It's going to be purely like, duplicated sentence removal or things like this. If there is anything that's remotely controversial, I would anyway open a pull request and discuss it on the list.
Yeah, I mean, if there's minor things that you note, just fix them. If it's again, I kind of trust your judgment that if anything kind of raises the level of like, hey, I need a double check, that'd be great. Just ask for a review from somebody. That'll work too. But if it's simple editorial stuff, just fix it.
So thanks a lot for Juan and Richard to actually push the trigger on many of those. That was very helpful.
Excellent. So do you want? Are you gonna publish a new version and then are you gonna publish a new version to the data tracker and then do a
Up
pass?
to you,
or do
actually.
want to do a pass?
Up to you. Whether we, I mean, depends on when the protocol is going to publish the next draft, I guess. If it publishes the next draft in a week, I might actually take the week to do like a typo kind of review. Otherwise, I could just trigger it right now. It's like, it's not a problem.
So Richard, what do you think?
I mean, we'll see how the discussion goes today. I think
Fair enough.
if everything goes well here, I think we're probably ready to pull the trigger on the protocol after this meeting. But if we have some things that are still in the draft, we might need a couple.
I mean, I would say that there are some other people that will catch duplications and the like for us, but feel free to if we do publish it, Benjamin, I think it's okay that you have another working version that like you don't publish yet.
Okay.
We can point that more and more reviewers are becoming more and more savvy about GitHub, and we'll note that like, oh, you know, the editor's already got one rolling and they fixed it over here, so then it's not a big deal. So it shouldn't be a thing. So
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
Excellent news. Thank you very much for doing all that. Let's go to protocol then, right?
I just wanted to say, Benjamin, before you go and make a new version, I'm going to do a 1-character PR that adds a carriage return that makes the section formatting wrong. You'll see that in 5 minutes.
I hope your 1-character change is going to make the section formatting right.
It's going to make it correct. Yes.
All right. Great. Okay, so we're over to protocol. Issues or pull requests?
Let's just do pull requests because all the issues are covered by pull requests.
Before I get too much farther, does anybody want to take notes?
I can take notes. It's fine.
Great. I don't know, Richard. You normally don't use the data tracker, but if you do, just send them over to me and I can get them uploaded. All right. Appreciate it. All right. Sorry. So pull requests or issues?
PRs, please.
All right.
Sorry, I'm just taking some notes on the architecture. 1 second.
No worries. I only see 9 things, so hopefully it won't take the full 2 hours, but you never know.
And it's really just the 5 things that cover the 4 things.
Oh, right. Great. So that's awesome. But it's good to see we got Joel here too. All right, good. Marta?
All right, so let's go in easiness order here, I guess. Which of these is going to be easiest? How about 841? Let's start with the IANA one. So I don't know. So Teofil's on a train, so he may not be here, but he pointed out this issue that we have signature labels to disambiguate signatures from different contexts. They don't overlap. When he pointed this out, the analogy occurred to me of exporter labels. TLS has an exporter label registry. I checked with Ecker to say, hey, was that an accident, or like was that something you'd do again if you had the chance? And he said this was a good thing to have, so I added an exporter label registry as well. So this just makes two new registries, points to them from the text. The other change here I did, you'll notice these recommended changes in all the other registries. All the registries were copying and pasting the recommended text from Cypher suites, and so I just made it point back to that section instead of copying. So hopefully that's okay with IANA. The only thing that seemed like it might be interesting or controversial on the registries themselves is I put a provision in here for private use. Those who've hung around the IETF might remember the X- header stuff for HTTP, where stuff started out as private and then it turned not private, and so having the X- prefix was troublesome. So I don't know if people wanted to reserve private space that way or not. I don't know, Sean, you have thoughts on this as someone who's dealt with this, or Rowan, someone who's dealt with IANA stuff in the past?
I mean, some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. It's something we could bike shit on for a while. But if it's a functionality we need or want, then I think we just have to be like, all right, well, you tell us what's the the quote unquote right way to do it, and we'll do that. This is just our suggestion. So I don't think you're not looking for a hill to die on here. You're just looking for a mechanism, right? So
Yeah.
You got to be fine. I don't know, Rowan, do you have any?
I'm not sure that we need to have the private label. I mean, but the point here is just that if you wanted to have if you really wanted people to go and expected people to do stuff in a private space, you could ask them to use the reverse domain name. But I don't have a strong feeling. I think this is fine. I'm not sure that saying begin with private colon is necessary, but the problem that we've had though is when somebody started off and did something that was private, and then it became something that was standard, and so then you have like multiple versions of the thing. So you have the label that is with private and the label without private.
Well, and I think the other thing, the contrast with these string values as opposed to integers with finite size, is that these aren't really contentious, right? Like if someone gets X forwarded for, or just defines forwarded for, you can define forwarded on behalf of, or some like language variant of it. And there's not a resource constraint. So yeah, I'm okay removing the private thing. I just stuck it in there because I figured it's easier to have some text and take it out than to invent something on the fly.
So I will note that in the most recent discussion about exporters in TLS was a discussion about making the registry specification required. So the designated expert can. So there's no need, and they actually don't have that for exporters, right? Like I don't think they actually have a private label in the front. So maybe I don't know.
Well, so what's your suggestion?
I don't know. I could see dropping it. I could see dropping it because you don't really need it. And at the end of the day, it will solve. Dropping private would solve the whole. Now it's actually being used a lot.
Yeah, and then all the registries we have here are specification required. So
yeah, so I
not like we're going to see some land grab of first come first serve. Yeah.
No, I mean, I just again, like you said, it's we're gonna spell the name wrong. It'd be cool, right, on purpose, like to differentiate it. So if it's not a resource constraint, I feel like maybe we can just drop it. Granted, this is probably opening us up for a Gen Art comment, but at least we've talked about it now. So I'd say
that will happen either way.
Correct. My crystal ball is so cloudy with those reviews. But yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and just delete it.
Yeah, okay, so I'll remove that. One other thing to note here, if you scroll down in the exporter label registry definition, there's nothing there in the initial contents. There are no initial contents. I don't know if that'll trip anything up. I don't know, Sean, do you remember having issues with defining empty registries that are empty to start?
The only thing I think is just, I think you can have an empty table, just reserve the first value 0 is reserved or whatever. Like, I think you have to give them like the rows of the column you want and just give them a column, make it empty. Can we reserve a value in there or something?
I can put some sort of stub in there, or make a table with
I think if you did that, that'll work because they might be like, well, what's the table look like?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
If you just copied the stuff from here and just the first value just put reserved, like I think I wonder if the TLS registry exporter, did they reserve one of the values?
I don't think so.
Marta and I have a suggestion for an export label. We were going to anyway suggest an extension that uses an exporter key. So if it's really an issue, then we would have an initial exporter label to suggest.
Well, I mean, I've also got one for the S-frame extension. But the question is, whatever we put in this initial table, we want to have in the base spec.
Yeah, so I think that's right. I think it's okay to register something empty. Just give them the table with the 3 headings and just leave it blank. You don't have to put a reserve value in there for this
Okay.
string
Yeah,
stuff.
I'll just put one headers, header only table. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's about making sure that the instructions are clear to them. It's like, here's our table. It's empty. Thank you. Right. Okay. Cool.
All right. Otherwise, folks, okay with merging that? Any last call for objections? Okay, I can make those tweaks and then merge it.
I found a typo, so there is a comment in the PR. So just check it out.
Oh, okay. You said there's a typo?
Yeah, there is a typo.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll hit that.
Just in time editing. I love it. All righty.
All right. Next one. I guess we can look at 839.
All right.
Again, not super interesting. This is just a terminology one. There was some discussion on the issue. I guess a Crispin developer was looking at this and noticed that we're sprinkling this MLS prefix on a bunch of structs. And so I went through and just did a search and replace to change the names to things that don't have MLS and are a bit clearer. I noticed this morning that so there was, I think, pretty broad agreement on that mapping in the issue. Yeah, the one people seem to be unhappy with is group content. So Conrad suggesting message content. I think Benjamin suggested frame content a little lower. It's just a name, I don't care. So who wants to fight it out?
There is also content AAD that I think you need to map with. I think you change it to private message. It should be changed to private message AAD. I think something like this. You should change content to them. So I made the random. I made the mistake of actually submitting a PR for changing it because there are so many entries. It like clubbers a bit everything, but it's exactly the. I mean, you know, it's a frame. It has content. I don't know. Group is a bit tricky though. I don't think I agree with Conrad that. I mean, I don't particularly care about the name, but group is a bit misleading, I think.
Yeah, the thinking with group content was that it was content. So recall that is content with like the few metadata fields on the top states for this group ID and this epoch. So I think that was the idea, that this was like content that is targeted to a group. But like,
I don't mind.
Again,
I mean,
I would be shocked. Like, folks, I
wouldn't be shocked keeping it if you want to keep it.
Conrad, I see you're on the call. Do you want to argue for message content, or Joel? I just unmuted.
I'm very, very slightly leaning towards frame content because that just was quicker just now for me to figure out what it meant. But yeah, message. My first thought was like, oh, is it an application message? It's like the first thing that came to mind. That's why the frame. But again, this is no strong preference.
I have a slight preference for the public message and private message, instead calling those signed message and encrypted message, just because I think that for non-crypto folks, I think it'd be clear.
Well, I mean, the encrypted message is also signed. So
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I don't have a preference for like either message or frame. Not a huge fan of the group content. Maybe also because it sounds a bit more like group context. But then again, that's maybe a bit not that bad in terms of confusing the two.
I'm not hearing anybody really objecting to frame.
So I might make one minor amendment there and call it framed content with a D for the past tense. So it's this content that has been framed.
Well, it could be framed.
Sorry, can you say that again?
It could be content that will be framed depending on where in the your sender or receiver.
I mean, well, I mean, it is content that has been encoded in the MLS framing in the sense that it's been, you know, framed for a group and epoch, and then on the receive side, you're unframing it, but you're still, you know,
yeah, fair enough.
It is in the frame when you're looking at it.
Fair enough. No objections.
So on Rowan's, so unless there's objections, I'll go with framed content. Okay. On Rowan's point about public-private, yeah, I kind of enjoyed the ambiguity that public and private gave you because, you know, it's, as Conrad points out, it's a little tough to get into specifics and still be concise. So I'm kind of inclined to keep public and private. Does anyone else kind of share Rowan's concerns there or have different suggestions?
It also gives us the ability to change how we actually, like in future versions of MLS, we can keep the public and private and change the way, you know, we sign things or whatever, or even for extension. So I would be in favor of keeping that, I think, of keeping private and public.
All right, so if no one else has thoughts, sounds like rough consensus in favor of keeping public-private.
Yeah, I think I just leave it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so as Benjamin suggested, I'll update the content AAD to say something a little bit clearer. I'll up to frame, and I'll change to frame content, and then I can get this merged. Okay, let's see. That's 8:38 is probably the. Why don't we go to 8:36? Actually, I think that's the next. Because then 8:37 and 38 together.
I'm sorry, you cut out for me. I missed the number 836 or 37.
Sorry, yeah, if we could go to 8:36 next, I think that's the next easiest one. So Paul pointed out that we have this sender data construction where we grab a sample of the ciphertext and use that to create the key and nonce to encrypt the sender data. And that correctly set off some flags for him because there wasn't much analysis showing of why that taking a sample of the ciphertext is secure. Like, what if the ciphertext is is maliciously crafted to have a specific prefix to give you a specific key. It might lead you to reuse nonces or something. So this prose I added basically takes, so recall that the scheme, the sender data scheme, is inspired by the scheme that Quick does, which was in turn inspired by this nonces or noticed paper from Biller et al. So the Quick, this section is effectively just a copy paste and it's an adaptation of the text in RFC 9001, kind of pointing out how this maps over to that paper and its analysis, and that the paper analyzes this HN1 construction, which is effectively what we're doing here, and shows that if the primary AEAD is indistinguishable from random data, then the sample and derive key and obfuscate the sender data scheme also protects the sender data. So this section is pointing out to that analogy, and thanks to Conrad for helping get the terminology tuned up, because I was drawing from the Quick text, which is a little ambiguous. I think we've got actually a tighter description here. So I just want to put this in front of folks to see if folks thought it was a clear description. This is really just explanation for the sender data protection scheme. So I think Conrad did a pretty thorough review on this. I think he had approved it. I think this is pretty clear to me. So I think unless folks have concerns about it, I think this is ready to merge.
I haven't really dug into it, but I did read over it. From what I could tell, it looked okay. Yeah, I didn't really dig into it super deep. I was just reading the other paper to try and reconstruct.
All right, so I think what I'm the nice thing about this, Joel, is that there's always more time until it actually gets a number slapped on it. So I feel like we should merge this, and then if there's any issues that arise later, we can go ahead and get them fixed. By clarifying language, because I mean I think the construct is right. It's just maybe the description, and then I think maybe we're okay.
Yeah, Marta, I saw you unmute there briefly. Did you have a comment here?
No, sorry, I forgot to wait. I was just going to say that same here. I read over it. It sounds reasonable. So I didn't read that paper thoroughly as well, but I can look at it a bit closer, and it looks fine. So I think this one is fine. If there are issues, we can follow up.
Cool.
I mean, just to clarify,
it
doesn't change any behavior, right? This is just description. Like this has been in the spec for like forever,
Yeah,
right?
there's no change to behavior. This is just description.
Okay.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think it's a part that wasn't analyzed too often. I think that's why this assumption of PRF hasn't shown up in a fair number of the MLS papers that I've seen. I don't know, Benjamin, did you guys include this part, like hiding the sender data, in the analysis you guys did?
No, I don't think so. Especially because we didn't do a computational proof, right? So probably Theophile can say, but I'm pretty sure he didn't do either.
Then I don't know of any paper that actually analyzes this part, but the PRF notion is reasonable.
Yeah, I agree. And that was not to say that it's a problem or anything. It was just, if there is a paper, that would be an easy way for me, to go and read that and then see that it lines up with the text. That's all. I think it's fine. So I'll have it on my to-do to go over it more thoroughly, and if I don't find any issues, then that's it. It just stays in, I guess.
Well, I guess the thing to know is that we're not exactly doing what's in the paper, but we're deviating a bit in that we don't, like in the paper they use XOR, we use AAD, and in the paper they use the ciphertext to as the nonce, and we only use the ciphertext to as context input to a PRF that, in addition to a proper key, derives the nonce and the key. So my take was essentially we're being kind of stronger than what's in the paper, so it felt right. But again, it would be great if someone else could document this.
I was checking.
Cool.
Yeah, we can have a second look, but it does sound reasonable and sounds like we're stronger. That's true.
All right, so I've got that marked as ready to merge in the notes. So thanks for folks taking a look. All right, so that brings us to the last two here, 837, 838, which are results of a suggestion from Theophile. Actually, Sean, you want to click over to the issues for a second? And actually, Theophile, are you on in a way you can do audio? If you wanted to cue this one up.
So I'm on, but I don't know for how long.
We can hear you now.
Yes. So 2 seconds.
And Sean, it's at 834 there, up one.
So is it the remove thing? Yes. So
yes, this is the remove PR.
So I mean, it's just an idea that I had while I was trying to sleep. So not really super attached to it, but still, I thought it would be interesting to.
I think we may have lost Theophile. If I could, I'll try and pick up where he was leaving off. I think the idea of this idea is that we have this unmerged construct, and we use it when we add new members. But it can actually be used at remove time as well, in the sense that if a leaf is unmerged at a parent node, that means that the leaf holder doesn't know the private key for that parent node. And so when you remove that leaf node, in principle, you could just remove that leaf node from the unmerged nodes and not blank the parent node, because the removed member doesn't know the private key for the parent node. So that's the principle here, which I personally find kind of appealing in terms of the symmetry with the add flavor. It kind of completes the life cycle of unmerged leaves. Right now we have add builds up and get clear, but the parent gets reset, but now kind of removes smoothly if you remove those unmerged leaves. Raphael noted in the issue, though, that unmerged the integrity of technically unmerged leaves is not as consistent as it could be. So a malicious adder, someone who's adding a new member to the group, could construct a tree that has unmerged leaves that where a leaf node is marked as unmerged when in fact it actually knows the private key. And so if you followed the logic here, you would remove them from the unmerged leaves, and but the member would still be joined effectively because they know the private key for the node, and that node would still be in the tree. I think with some additional validation rules, we can get to where that's not an issue, but we need to have those validation rules and the proofs that they actually accomplish the properties we need here. So the concern, I think, here is that this is an appealing kind of symmetry property. It's an appealing efficiency property, but there was some concern that more analysis was needed. So in light of that, I went ahead and wrote up 2 PRs, one of which adds some validation rules to the tree validation, integrity validation that enforces some stricter rules on unmerged leaves. And I also wrote up a PR that implements this in terms of removing from unmerged leaves. It's effectively this diff I posted. So on update, you just let's see, you only blank the intermediate node if it's not unmerged, and on remove from the unmerged leaves. But so I went ahead and wrote those PRs up, but I wanted to put this out to the group to see what folks think about merging these PRs.
So there's one comment I made on the PR itself, actually not in the issue, and that is that the scope is actually much smaller than I initially thought. So this is only for new joiners who have not yet done an update. So the general recommendation is to do an update as fast as possible after you have been added to a group. And that is regardless of what the update policy is in general. Regarding the frequency of updates, because as long as you haven't done that update, you're still in this interim state that is not quite the same as if you had done the update. So and then so you only get an optimization when new joiners that haven't done the update are being removed. And my question is, how likely is that ever to happen? In some very specific scenarios, it could be more frequent, where a lot of people constantly join and a lot of them get removed by somebody else. But in general, this is not likely to happen at all. So this could be a really small optimization, and then a lot of discussion about the security. So the trade-off in general for me doesn't seem that great.
So I think I agree with that. This exact thing was actually discussed when, I don't remember if you I'm not sure if you remember, when I was at the IETF first introducing the unmerged leaves and path thing with Karthik. That's the exact discussion that we had, like on the first day when we introduced unmerged leaves, like, because we can remove that as fast as we add them, basically. But that said, I do agree with you that from my point of view, it's not really the theoretical problem that that can occur in terms of security, but it's more like an implementation thing where people will mess up the bookkeeping. And I would prefer to actually, I think it's worth avoiding that, because I think it complexifies the implementation somehow for, as you say, something that's not necessarily a very large performance win. So, you know, I think the idea is even trivial, right? It's like it's quite good, but I'm not sure if it's worth doing simply because of the additional complexity of the bookkeeping, of making sure that you keep track of everything, that someone, you know, if you lose state, what happens if you look at the wrong node in the chain? You say, oh, maybe, you know, there is no unmerged leaf there, so there is no unmerged leaf anywhere, but maybe that's wrong. So you have this kind of additional complexity in the removal that's not necessarily great, I think. So yeah, I would lean towards what you say, Raphael, and maybe not just ignore it. If we see that's a real problem, we can always add it through an extension or something.
Yeah, that was my
That's a good point, Benjamin. I think it shouldn't be called fast remove or faster remove. It should be called undo unmerged leave, essentially.
Marta?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that was also my suggestion, to make it an extension, maybe, because it's really not clear to me at this point how secure this thing is. It's like, I don't really fully understand why some malicious member can't undo remove of himself somehow. I would have to look at this like much longer, and none of the existing analysis has this. They're not going to be updated, so I'm a bit reluctant to make it part of this standard. Extension is fine, and it's a cool idea, I think.
Yeah, I think it was covered by some proof that we like, some proof that we did, but like still, I think that's for the complexity and for the potential problems. We should just not include that.
Yeah, I think we're zeroing in here on not doing this one. Is this coupled with the other one, Richard, or is this?
No, I think the other one is probably still worthwhile, even if we don't do this one. So let's close this. I think you can go ahead and hit the close button on this one, and then we can go to the other one. Or I can hit the close in a second. Now you want the 837. Oh, okay, close it. Yeah, I think the logic is correct if the unmerged leaves are correct. I think it's, yeah, as Benjamin pointed out, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in unmerged leaves, but yeah, 837. So 837 tries to bring us toward that correctness of unmerged leaves by adding some extra checks. If you want to go over to the diff view. Right, so right now, you only check that an unmerged leaf at a parent node is actually under the parent node. This just adds the additional check that everything between the parent node and any non-blank, I should add non-blank to the intermediate nodes, but everything between the parent in question and the leaf node also has the leaf node as unmerged, which is a property that you have in all the real cases of unmerged leaves. So anything that violated this invariant would be synthetic and maliciously crafted, and not something that came about naturally. Ron? So that's the summary here. Any thoughts from folks?
Checks seem to make sense to me. My take is, you know, we're not going to harm anything by introducing more checks, as long as we're not breaking correctness, and they don't seem to break correctness. So unless there's, you know, counter arguments in terms of, oh, this imposes a lot of whatever computation or something like that, it seems like pretty clear sailing for me. That's my initial take.
So the
Yeah,
assumption here, those rules are not redundant because, so yeah, I stumbled upon this, I think ninja equation is how Teofil put it. My question is whether this is redundant or not, and that's what I cannot ascertain right now.
Yeah, there's a little bit of redundancy in that the parent hash rules check this property, this, you know, the continuity property, the downward continuity property within a parent hash chain. But if it crosses, it doesn't, the parent hash chain validation doesn't enforce this property across parent hash chains. So if you're at the bottom of a deep tree and, you know, there's crossing chains above you, this adds an explicit check, you know, that crosses all of those chains. So,
and actually every one of the unmerged leaf chains is going to cross the parent hash chain, right? Because they didn't do any commit. So isn't that always going to be the case every time?
At the very least, you'll go from the leaf into a hash in a parent hash chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like it's particularly expensive. You have to navigate the tree a little bit, which can be expensive if you do it a lot, but it doesn't seem too bad. So,
yeah.
But yeah, thanks for the clarification, Richard.
So this is for joining the group, right? At the moment you join the group, you anyway do a lot of tree traverse and so on. So it's anyway you have to deal with this somehow. So I don't think it introduces new complexity.
It's definitely not the most expensive thing you do when you join the group.
Yeah, exactly. You have to somehow. I think it can be done efficiently with all the stuff you have to do when you join the group, like compute all the parent hashes. It's very.
And on a side note, I think traversing the tree ever since we have full trees is a lot faster than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
When you navigate the right side of the tree, because you don't have to do the boundary checks anymore.
Cool. All right. Yeah. No, I agree with it. Thanks for that summary, Joel. It's a good point that, like, I don't think this harms correctness. It's not super inefficient, and I don't see how this could harm security. So yeah, that seems like a pretty clear argument for going and merging. Ron, any thoughts here since you just popped up on video? Okay, thumbs up. All right, I think this is ready to merge then. So Sean, don't hit the button because I need to.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you.
Intermediate notes.
Yeah, and the merging ones. Yeah, I noted that. Great.
All right, I think that's all on the protocol doc. So thanks to folks for the discussions here and on the issues.
So you're going to go ahead and make minor changes and then pump out a new version. All right, Benjamin.
Yeah, I think I can make the tweaks here in fairly short order and get things merged this afternoon. And then yeah, I think it's ready to pull the trigger anytime.
So if that looks good, then Benjamin, go ahead before, you know, you don't have to necessarily wait for Richard to go because it might be later. You might already be home. Let's go ahead and get them both out the door, and then that'll tick off the revised ID that Paul asked for, so he'll know that the ball moved back to him. But I'll make sure to send an email to let him know.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. We'll do that just right now.
Yeah. So I guess the next big question is, what do you guys want to talk about next? We still got an hour and 10 minutes. Do you want to move over to extensions or Federation, or do you want to take an hour back and go to the pub?
We can do extensions quickly.
All right.
There's not a lot to discuss. So yeah, going over the trivial stuff. So after some initial analysis from Franciscus, I merged the targeted messages PR. I botched the formatting a bit, so I'm correcting that now. And I released a new version of it. So I think at some point, Theophile started looking also into the security of the targeted messages, but there was some part missing at the time. So that should be there now. Yeah, then I think the only other thing that needs discussing in general is Rowan's PR. So the context is either we add that here in the extensions document or we make it a separate document. And that was an open question. And I think the idea was to discuss it at an interim.
Marta and I had a comment about the targeted messaging PR that we, I'm not sure if now's the time to talk about it. It's kind of a suggestion basically for doing things a bit different. And I wanted to, and a justification for why we think that might be maybe a better approach. And I wanted to know what you guys think.
Do you have it written up anywhere?
No.
Or do you want to present it now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can summarize it quite quickly. I mean, what the core idea is, not the details, but I just wanted to know if the core idea is appealing or if you guys have immediate objections. Or essentially, when Marta and I read this PR, one thing that struck us both independently was that it reuses the Leaf HPKE keys, right?
Yes.
And it kind of, generally that's a bit of a risky thing, right? Because now we're using these, we've got ciphertext encrypted to these keys, which actually come from two different contexts. One is path secrets and one is target messages. So our first thing was like, well then, okay, so let's look at these ciphertexts and make sure that you can't somehow, you can't confuse them. You can't use ciphertext from one, like generated in one setting and plug it in and it gets decrypted successfully in the other setting. That wouldn't be good. Right, that leads to problems. And indeed, it's not possible, but it's not possible kind of almost as a side effect of how the PSK thing works in HPKE, which I don't feel like that was really the intention. And so, for example, one thing one could do is one could create an extension that says, oh, I want to do PSKs in MLS because whatever, I'm worried about post-quantum. I have some external post-quantum secure PSK. And the way I'm going to do it, why not? I'm going to use PSKs in the HPKE ciphertext as well. Like whatever, what I'm showing with this is suddenly this extension that you've defined for targeted messaging is no longer secure if depending on how that PSK extension is written, because there's an interplay there with the PSKs. So the fact that this extension works, although you're reusing keys now, these HPK leaf keys for two different things, is a pretty subtle argument, and in the future could get broken unintentionally. So based on that, our first thought here was there should be a separate key for this. Each key should have one purpose, so we never have this problem of ciphertexts, can get encrypted to it in different contexts. So and so instead of just, go ahead, Marta.
You can easily introduce this key as an extension in the leaf node, right? So just another key in the leaf node just for this, and then there would be like no fear that ever someone uses this extension to decrypt stuff from another extension.
Exactly.
Sorry, one quick intermediate question. Don't we ensure that messages don't get confused by using different signature labels? Wouldn't that be enough?
It's more like if I see, somebody sends an update path, and I can take the ciphertext that was in that update path, encrypted to that leaf, and create a new targeted message that I send where I just drop in that ciphertext, and I use this targeted message and I send it to that person. Yeah, it's an insider attack. And that person, if things line up with the PSKs, will actually decrypt that and interpret this as a targeted message. But what they're actually decrypting is the path secret.
So it's good you mentioned the labels in signatures, actually. That's why it's okay to reuse the signature key, because we use labels. We separate everything by these labels. So that's why we're not so concerned about reusing the signature key in the leaf for this extension. But we should do something similar for HPKE somehow. That's
but wouldn't that be a problem of the protocol in general? Shouldn't we then inject something into the HPKE PSK in the main protocol just to make sure that that's now an update path that's being canned to
I think right now the protocol assumes that the HPKE key is only used for it and not for other
Exactly.
purposes, which makes
I
it
think all
secure.
analysis assume that.
Right. Yeah. Sure. That's fair. So yeah, I mean, of course, having a separate key, that's intuitively makes a lot of sense how that's then separate. But it's also a bit like the sledgehammer approach of separation here, because you need another
one
key.
more question. Sorry, to interrupt. Can't we just use the info field in the HPKE encryption? Inject the context there to disambiguate?
Yeah, I think we could, but we would have to write the protocol in a way that it allows reuse of its key for different purposes, as long as the info is different. It would have to be explicit in the protocol as well. I think it's now explicit for signatures that you're giving all these labels so that if an extension wants to use the signature key, it can, as long as it uses a different label. But now it's kind of a bit weird because we're using the same key in the base mode in the main protocol. Now we're using the same key in the PSK mode, but with different PSK. Maybe another extension uses the same PSK. It's a bit slippery somehow.
But so what you just said about the protocol, that would only be like some prose in the protocol saying that the keys could be reused if another info is being used, right? Or does it actually mechanically, are you proposing any mechanical changes to the protocol?
It does change the interface to the protocol.
Isn't the
How does it
info
change?
used with the context of the epoch something or something? I forget.
So I don't think we use anything there, and that's one of the things I've been wondering actually a while back when I was working on targeted messages, why the main protocol doesn't like do some additional channel binding in HPKE simply because it could.
No, I thought it inputs the context into some.
It puts the context somewhere, but
I think the context is included as AAD at least.
yeah, but not as the PSK.
No,
maybe that doesn't really make a difference though. But
I think there is certainly a context binding in the HPKE encryption.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, you're right about that.
Group context or something, right?
Yeah, group context goes somewhere.
To me, I mean, first of all, yeah, thanks for bringing it up. I think it's a very valid point, but it feels like we have a chance to fix this in a better way, because if we have this ambiguity in the protocol, maybe now's the time to fix that. Since we already have that for the signatures, why not do it here? This might not be the last extension that wants to reuse HPKE keys.
So I think I somehow agree with you, Raphael. The fact is that we should fix it anyway. Like, even if we don't allow the reuse of the keys, which I think is better, right? In the main protocol, we should never reuse that leaf key, I think. I agree with Mark and Joel on that, if that's what they are saying. But we should still fix the problem by like disambiguating somehow the use case of that key with an explicit label. It doesn't solve their problem, right? Because it's an insider attack anyway. But I think it's worth thinking about it at least, because we could make sure like we have a differentiator for mistakes more than for active malicious insiders. Like some other protocol, some external protocol is gonna use that key for something.
Why? Sorry, maybe I missed this, but why doesn't the added label or info not solve this issue?
No, I think that is enough, but we need to do it, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there is anything right.
So I think your suggestion works. It's I think it would work. It could be made to work. I think right now, the only time we're putting in a label in the extension that specifies, oh, this is actually a targeted message, that goes into the PSK derivation part, but not into the HB key. I think you're right. If we put in more context that specifies the purpose of the ciphertext, it probably would address the problem. It still makes me uneasy to be reusing keys from the protocol for different purposes, but if everybody's okay with that, I'm not going to push for it.
No,
because...
I mean, I think I completely agree with you on that. We should probably use different keys. I mean, it's more storage for sure, but so let's see. What we could do, like for our immediate problem, is to add this label thing and think later of whether we want to allow or not allow the reuse of the keys. My take would be to have an extension and have a different key, but we can think about it later in some sense. Like this gives us like some time to think about it.
Would it make sense to?
Sorry, go ahead, Martin.
Would it make sense to say in the protocol document that the key should not or must not be reused if we decide that it shouldn't be? Like just add an explicit text, because so at least I always assume that it's not reused. It's just for MLS, and then no one should use it for any other purpose.
But I still have a question about the reuse here, because we do reuse it in the protocol. Like we can update path multiple times to the same HPK public key.
Indeed, and the analysis take that into account. But that is the only thing. Like the analysis works if you exactly quantify or make explicit how this key is going to work. And you're right that it does get used for different update secrets, but it doesn't get used for something completely different.
Yeah, I understand, but with the right domain separation that Konrad proposed, what is missing? Just for my understanding, I understand you're uneasy about it, but
yeah. So I'm saying I think it would work, but if we open the door to people allowing the construction of extensions, the definition of extensions that use this HPKE key, forevermore we will have to worry that every such extension actually does good domain separation with all existing applications of this key, because otherwise they might start breaking existing applications. And that's the door we're opening here. And so for this extension, it could work. You're right. We could make it work without introducing a new key. It's just that's what makes me uneasy. That's why I'm saying we're opening a door here to making our lives in the future more complicated. And that's just
what. Sorry, can I make a proposal? I think I understand your concern now, and I agree that there should be like a clear boundary between protocol and extensions. And yeah, maybe we should add another key. One alternative approach would be akin to the signature approach, have a kind of encrypt to leaf key function that must be used if you want to encrypt to the leaf key, even by extension. So so that you cannot use the key directly, but you have to go through this encrypt to leaf key function, and then you have to supply a label that's specific.
It almost feels like a new extension somehow, an extension encrypt to leaf key, right? And then you can do this one extension. Any other extension can use this extension in a sense.
We can have the extension, or we can make it part of the core protocol. It would maybe make sense to make part of the core protocol, but because otherwise extensions use another extension, maybe a bit weird. But yeah, I don't know.
That sounds fine, except it's a bit late to add it. I don't know if we can manage.
I think my understanding, Konrad, what that would do is it make sure that no future extensions will ever break the core protocol. But what it will not do is guarantee that extensions won't break each other.
Yeah.
Okay, but then it sounds like we need another IANA registry for domain separation of extensions.
Well, or just a separate
more.
Yeah, can't you just we do have an index for extensions? No, can't we just plug the extension index in there?
Oh, something like
and
that.
Separate that one. Sorry?
We'd also have to guarantee that all future extensions, whenever they use the HPK key, will use it in a way where they include whatever they register there as context.
The thing is, we probably cannot guarantee absolutely everything, but if we don't do anything about it, then there's a high likelihood that people will, come to existing HPK public keys without any guidance whatsoever, and then effectively damage the core protocol. Whereas here, we have a chance to give as much guidance as humanly possible to avoid that.
The reason I said before this changes the interface to the protocol is because up till now, I've always thought about this key being an internal secret to the protocol state. It's like saying we're going to pick some secret inside TLS that's at some point in the key schedule and start doing things with that TLS never considered. Like, yeah, people might do that, but that's really not what you're supposed to do if we don't expose this encryption key. And for now, I've always thought of these encryption keys being specific to MLS. They're not part of the interface. Nobody gets to reach in and do things with these.
I mean,
we're creating that now.
Similarly, we don't expose the epoch secret, for example, right? We do exporters. You can export a secret, but we don't expose the key schedule to applications.
But we don't have boundaries on what extension can and can't do. I think so. If I understand correctly, the idea was that extensions can change the protocol at will, essentially. So there is no clear boundary to extensions anyway, except if we create one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. So this is bound to happen anyway. At least here we have a chance to give some guidance and improve it. There is no guarantee either way, but it's more likely to go right if we are very explicit about it.
So, I mean, it's sounding to me like, and I'm clearly not the expert here, like either what we should do here in the main document is say that these HPKE keys must not be reused, especially in the leaves. I think I'm probably inclined to apply whatever the provision is uniformly to the leaf keys or the intermediate keys. Either they must not be used, or we need to have some sort of separator of, like, encrypt with label, like sign with label.
I think we should actually do both, Richard.
You're on mute, Rohan.
Yeah, Rohan's on mute. No, I was saying that I think we should do both, in the sense that adding the label helps us in every case, independently of what the extension does.
Well, I mean, if you have confidence that the keys will not be reused, then there's not much point to having a label. But you could say, like, you should use different keys and not reuse keys. But if you do, here's how to make it safe.
So, let me phrase it otherwise. Like, what does it cost to actually add a disobligurator anyway? So that if we want later on, we can do whatever we want with that separation, with that label. But at least we have it, which means that
It strikes me as good defense in depth.
And I don't think it is a problem with existing analysis, because it shouldn't invalidate any of that.
No, adding a label.
Yeah. It's the same principle as before with those extra checks. We're just adding. The only thing we're doing by adding context is making it even harder to do attacks. We're certainly not going to break. As long as we don't break correctness, we can only make things better or not change anything.
Right, we're just changing what is currently a 0 length input to some non-zero length constant input. That's the only change. All right, I can write a PR that does that. If folks can take a look later today, it won't slow us down too much.
Okay, it sounds like we have consensus on that part for the MLS protocol. And then it's still an open issue whether we use new keys for targeted messages or we have another input. I clearly understand, Joel and Marta, you lean towards introducing separate keys for that. But for the sake of discussion, that is then a separate open issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we have consensus on the protocol. Joel, you mentioned there was more than one thing that you wanted to propose for targeted messages.
No, sorry, that wasn't for targeted messages. That was just another extension. We had an idea. We wanted to. I guess I just wanted to run it by you guys, by everybody, to just know if if there's interest in this or not. In a nutshell, it's send to group, but from external. And the core idea is exporter key, use the exporter key to derive a chem key pair. That's sort of a group chem key specifically for the purpose of external people who want to send application messages to the group. That's roughly, we came across a use case where they were like, oh, this would be super awesome if we could send to the group from the outside. It's
yeah, this is not new. This is one of the first things we discussed a long time ago.
Yeah,
and I think it was even in the main protocol at some point, and then got discarded. Could do some archaeology there, but yeah, essentially a light version of that has been reused for external commits, because you essentially chem a new unit secret to the whole group.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think when we got rid of it, we said, this could be an extension someday, because there was not enough consensus to keep it in the main protocol. But so yeah, absolutely, we can revisit that. My intuition is that it's going to be an authentication problem more than anything, but yeah.
Authentication of this external center?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I guess that would have to be outside of the application somehow. Okay, the group doesn't know about the external center.
Probably not, no. I mean, we solved that for current external senders with extensions, but you probably have a chronologic problem here, because you might not know about the new member.
So if we've got if we're done with this one, I'd like to go ahead and talk about.
One more note on the previous one. I would note that there's also an authentication issue in the other direction, in terms of authenticating that the public key belongs to the group. But I think
we could.
there are authentication problems in both directions.
Yep, good point.
That's a very good point, but we solved that by signing the group info, I think, for external commits.
Yeah, you can do things like, have proofs that the signer is in the tree that it claims to, the signer claims is the tree hash for the group. Other things can get a little circular there.
If you put it in the group context, and that is part of like group info or something that could be signed, or if you don't want to reveal the whole thing, then I guess you can have like a person in groups.
I didn't mean to launch us down a design path here, just an that's also an issue.
Okay.
But yeah, I think long story short, I think this is definitely something we could discuss.
All right, cool. Let's do that. But I do think we want to move to the content advertising extension.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
All right. So basically, I wrote this as two versions. I wrote a standalone document, or I updated the standalone document, and then I wrote a PR to add this to the extensions document. So the working group has an easy choice. So basically, this extension, it needs to be like Mimi is going to depend on this most likely, and so I feel strongly that a solution to this problem needs to be a working group item, whether it's in the extensions document or whether it's standalone. I don't really have a strong preference. I do have one concern about the extensions document, which is that the relative, who would use each extension and the relative maturity and complexity of each of the, 3 extensions, if it were in there, could be quite different.
That, and at some point we'd have to be like, all right, we got 6, we're done. Like, we're not going to leave the document open forever, right? At some point you'd have to decide, all right, now we're going to publish. So that's the other thing you'd have to think about. I don't know. So if you're, to your point about the varying deployability or deployment status of the various extensions, I don't know if that matters as long as everybody thinks that they're not affecting security. If there's some need there and there's like 2 or more people that are willing to do it, then maybe we're like 2 people, then maybe we're good. I don't know. What do others think about just because I don't want this just to be a bucket where everything goes, right? We have to have some kind of like, litmus test for like why something got in here and like is there general interest and would more than a couple of people use it, even if they're just using it internally in their own implementations. Thoughts?
Extensions make me uneasy. We're so permissive with what we allow with extensions. Normally I think of like when you think of things that are extensible, you the way I think about it is there's some plugin hooks defined or something like that, and one of the big purposes of those is to make sure that you can't break too much with plugins. You can't, but we don't have anything like that with our extensions. Like, so you can always have some extension come along that just breaks everything for everybody. Like it breaks other extensions, it breaks the main protocol, and that's all possible. So
yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why. I mean, it's a lame thing, but like we have a recommended column, right, for these extensions, and it's not there's no strength to that at all, right? Because I think you're right. I think we allowed the extensions mechanisms to be able to go and change anything, right?
So maybe a question here for you, Joel, is do you think that there's any concern about the content type advertisement extension? Like if we take these sort of one by one.
I don't know it well enough. I'm not familiar enough to be able to say that. I do want to just add, though, that one by one analysis is not enough. Any kind of actual security analysis will always have to be with exactly these set of extensions that are all being used at the same time. It's not enough to analyze them one by one. They have to be analyzed together with everything else that's getting used, because we have no restrictions on what an extension can do. So I unfortunately I don't know for this particular one.
So I have a more general question. So I'm going to diverge slightly, but I'm going to come back to the content advertisement, I promise. So should we actually use that document to exactly ensure what you said, Joel? Like to have one document where we can basically centralize the most important extension for functionality that don't affect the security of the core protocol
and each other,
and like basically have a preamble or security preamble saying, oh yeah, like in those extensions you should not do this. But I'm not sure if it works, right? It's like just a thought, because some of those extensions will actually alter, so they should not alter the core protocol per se. I'm not sure. So there is a question here that maybe we can discuss offline or at another moment, but I wonder if it's not a good use of this document to specify things that don't affect the core protocol and like have things that affect the security of the core protocol outside in other documents, so that there is a clear distinction between things that do affect the core protocol and things that don't, as much as possible, right? Because of course you never have all the functionality in the extension, as Sean says, but maybe the few features that we actually really want and can design now, we should put in that document. I don't know. So maybe you should have this discussion later. And back to the content advertisement, I don't have a strong opinion. I guess I would say, Juan, do you think we need to change that? How much do you think we should change the document? How much will it require updates? So if it's something that is, pretty stable, I would say I think it would be fine to have it in the core extension document. If it's something that we want to, update with an RFC bis, with like TER, whatever, like something that we constantly update, or at least a few times, maybe that's worth having its own document that we can refer to in the extensions document. I don't know. I don't particularly mind, right? In the architecture document, we do refer to the external draft for now. So Do you think it will change much, or do you anticipate something like this?
I mean, I think that the set of people who are interested in this will tend to be more, application-y people, because it does have to do with how you advertise content types. There is,
at that point, that's well defined, right? They're not like Mimi's not going to go off and try to define some new way to do that, right?
No, I mean the Mimi charter, which was reviewed yesterday. I think they're ready to send it off to IETF for the 2-week review or whatever. But it says specifically in the charter that no MLS extensions will be done in Mimi. Like MLS extensions will be done in MLS.
No, but even the negotiating of the content types, right? Like, I mean, they're going to use MIME types, right? Like, they're not going to go off and define their own way of doing it, like something different. I'm trying to react to how many times this would get changed by the application developers, essentially.
Yeah. So
it seems like this might be done, right? Like
I think this is done.
Yeah.
If it's stable, we should keep it in there. It's fine, I think.
That's where I was going to go. If it's stable, we should leave it in the extension document.
So the main open issue, which can be done separately, is do we have a way to do the equivalent of multi-part alternative that people like? And so the appendix, which was the one of the major changes in this document from the last version, is a TLS presentation language sort of syntax for the same semantics, almost the same semantics as multi-part alternative, that just doesn't rely on having to use boundary markers. It uses sizes. So if you want, I mean, it might be easier to look at the document it formatted in the standalone document, which I'm pasting a link into the chat. But right now I can go and send an HTTP message, an HTTP post or GET with 2 different formats, and I can enclose them in a multi-part alternative, and the semantics of that is clear. Like, use one of these, use the one, use the first one of these that you support. So if you scroll down to the appendix, so this here is basically trying to encode the similar semantics, but without using boundary markers, which boundary markers are a bit of a pain because you have to scan the entire document to be sure that your boundary marker does not exist in the content of the message that you want to send.
So how about the following compromise? We get this started in the extensions document, which I think is going to be left open for a while anyway, because we need people to give a chance to add more things as they integrate MLS into their applications and realize something is missing. And after a while, then you would have a better feeling, Ron, if that's really finalized or not. And if there's a chance it's not, then you can always make it a separate document.
Actually, what you said makes me think we should do the reverse, because, like, we have the core protocol now, and Rohan's the draft could be done now, basically, right? So people could already use that. That forces, like, having it in the extension document actually forces us to wait, which is not either super great. So sorry, I'm like ping-ponging between the two positions, but What do you think about the multiplication of specs?
I mean, so if there's parts of it that are stable, we could get a provisional. Sorry, we could try to get a provisional registration. We can try to get a provisional registration from IANA for one of the extensions. I mean, if that's the concern, right? If they actually wanted to use it, I don't know if that would help, but
I mean, it'd be nice if, so from my perspective, this document, I think, can stand alone, and it's, I don't, there's sort of like no process or technical reason for me why this document isn't ready to be, just couldn't go out the door, like with, after protocol and architecture and federation, maybe like at the same time as federation or something, right? And it's something that there'll be a dependency in Mimi. It's also referenced in architecture. That can be, if that changes, that can be fixed in auth 48. But it's sort of nicer if it's already if it's already a stable reference, if you know that that's the reference it's going to be. So, I mean, my preference would be to make it a separate document, but maybe some other folks should weigh in that haven't said anything yet.
Raphael, what was your, what's the goal for this specific, the extensions document? Is it to centralize the things that we actually want, like for sure? And
so there was some discussion about that in past interims. And the discussion was mostly about whether every extension should have its own document or whether we have one document where we can collect some of them. Most likely extensions that are more likely to be used by several parties. And the guidance there was TLS, which also has a similar document. It doesn't preclude extensions to have their own document. It's just where we start also to set an example on how to do extensions. Obviously, Joel brought up some good points today that this discussion never took place before, but that was roughly what we discussed so far.
Okay, I don't want to push the statute restoration. I don't want to push the existing consensus if there was one, but I'm largely thinking that we should have the extension document that basically says, here is what you can, a guidance for all the other extensions saying, this thing you cannot touch because if you touch it, that involves security. That thing you can do whatever you want. But
that's something it sounds like something we should do anyway, just having an intro section and the extensions document. It doesn't mean that
for sure we should have
actually,
that. But, in some sense, in that document, things should be, in my mind, it should be like things that everyone will use, basically. So if we have good use cases for that, we should put them in there. But if we don't have good cases for that, we should just be a guidance document and have separate documents for those things that people will use sometimes.
Sure, but we already had some good enough consensus on AppAC and targeted messages so far. We could split them out in different documents, but AppAC is really small, for example.
I mean, the other idea is that we just go, all right, we got 3. We think these are good. We've actually got some general consensus to ship these things. Do it, and then if other ones come along, they can get added, and you can update this document or whatever to add them in as the the core extensions, so to speak. So there's multiple ways to handle this. I'm just kind of the sense is if we have like a couple that are good, that's great. We don't necessarily have to stay leave the document open for others to get added. I do feel Raphael's point about as MLS gets integrated more into applications, there are going to be people showing up being like, we need this, and it could be broadly applicable. The question is, how long would we wait? And maybe we don't need to wait that long. We can just ship with the ones that we got.
I would follow you on that, Sean. You are the experienced one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like again, because it's like, how long do you wait, and then it's going to cause problems because Rowan needs this, and the Mimi people are going to be beaten down. Like, why are we waiting for those guys? So if we can solve some problems, maybe we just merge this. Maybe we merge this content one in, and just be like, all right, how do people feel about just progressing it with the few that we have now? And if Joel's got a great one ready to go and he's going to launch forward, and he's like, oh, wait, I got one. That's great. That'll give us, impetus and motivations to review it and get it in the document or put it in its own.
So, but just from my understanding for Mimi, it would be good enough that stuff is in a draft, right? It doesn't have to be an RFC for Mimi to use it.
So Mimi could have, so it should be a working group draft, right? Yeah. So it could refer to extensions, or it could refer to a separate working group.
I think maybe what Raphael's getting at is Mimi's not going to be done quick, right? So the idea, I think you can get down if you want to do the use case requirements thing, you could throw out the use case document pretty quickly, get it through the door and get it published. But the actual protocol spec is probably not going to happen in a year, right? It's going to take a bit. Unless you got magic pixie dust that I don't know about, Rowan, it's going to take a while.
No, I don't have magic server pixie dust or magic draft.
I think what we should do in the short term here is we should merge this to get it in the document, and then we can figure out the machinations later. Where if Mimi shows up and is like, we need this quicker, we can rip it out and we can revive Rowan's draft and pump it through. And if not, we can let it kind of gestate and chill in the working group for a little while. And then at some point we go, all right, we're far enough along, move it. Does that sound like people can kind of live with that approach for now?
I can live with anything regarding this anyway.
So let's go ahead and merge let's go ahead and get this PR merged in then, and go from there. We'll wait for Joel's new great extension. And I do resonate a little bit with his statements about you need to kind of put guardrails and security considerations in about each one of the extensions. And I'm glad to see you did that, Rowan, with yours right away. And then motherhood and apple pie in the beginning part of the document is needed as well. But I'll be honest, I haven't read it in a little while. So.
Okay. One last thing that I just wanted to mention, which is that in terms of a structure, the extensions document, it has security considerations underneath targeted messages, but I think that there should be a security consideration section that has subsections that talk about the individual extensions security considerations.
Yeah, that's probably what people will be looking for. And so we got 3 or 6 extensions. They can all be in each extension and security considerations. 6.1 is the one for, the first extension, and 6.2 is for the next one, and whatever. Yeah.
Right. And that's also how for my thing that I did for the IANA considerations as well. So.
Yep. I think that's good. That's good. That's formatting stuff that we can take care of. So that's great. Cool. What is next?
Okay, I put a comment in there and we can merge it. There's just a conflict we need to resolve.
Great.
So that's done.
Yeah, I think the problem is that since you merged targeted messages first, it wouldn't have, if we had merged them in the opposite order, it probably would have worked.
Yep.
So anyway, I'll let you guys deal with the GitHub jujitsu to make sure everything all gets in there.
Do we need to talk about federation?
That was going to be my next point. Is there anything to say other than people want it?
So no work has happened on the draft. I was on holidays when it suddenly expired. Apologies for that. So it expired again.
So I have a remark about that document that we never made and that we should probably make is so for Mimi and for Federation actually, we need to think about we need to think a lot about privacy. I think we'll have. I'm not sure where to put the privacy thing because the way I see it, we left the delivery like the authentication service and the delivery service. We actually made them pretty abstract, even in the architecture document, so that we can have different variations about those. But we need at some point to speak about like the state of the art of how do you make a delivery service private, or how do you make authentication service private, especially in the context of federation, because in the federation case, basically, you need to transfer some information about the users that are under your umbrella. To the others, and talk to the other users that are in a different umbrella. So like, what do each system do? And basically there is like a very big privacy gap that we didn't solve anywhere, basically. So I wonder where we should do that work, whether it should be like completely separate, or whether we should do this kind of document under the federation. That might be the best solution, actually. But I'm not sure. I'm not clear with that. Where do you think we should do that, Rafael?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Because, as you said, in the architecture document, we were very vague on purpose. But then with Mimi, we want to be very concrete on purpose. Otherwise, we don't get interop. So yeah, we could definitely extend the federation document in that sense to talk about MLS specific things and be much more concrete than we are in the architecture document. I mean, there is some start for the delivery service that is not fleshed out at all.
My intuition though is that it's not necessarily for the federation document, because the federation document is a weak privacy instance of, like the best state-of-the-art private centralized instance of a delivery service. So my intuition is that we actually need another document, which would be like, here is the best thing that you can actually achieve, and here are the security and privacy goals for that thing. And then on the federation document, you say, oh, by the way, you need to relax that particular property, because for federation, you are interacting with another delivery service or another authentication service. That's my intuition, but
yeah. So I think the status quo right now is
basically I'm saying it should be a BCP more than maybe.
I mean, I agree with the idea. The thing is, the most privacy problems are to be expected with the delivery service, not so much with the authentication service. And so what you just described, ideally, will be in the Mimi delivery service document as well. It's not there yet. It's just alluding to that. It needs to be fleshed out, obviously. But since that document describes how a privacy-preserving delivery service can work, we need a lot of meat in there anyway, with security concerns and privacy considerations and whatnot. And for the stuff that we cannot have in there, we could still have that in the federation document. But now we're talking more about a MIMI document than about the MLS document.
Not really, right? Because you want, like, independently of MIMI, you want those things. You want to be able to say, oh, by the way, here is how you write a delivery service that is preserving privacy. Here are the problems with the. So, I mean, most of the information is already encoded. I encoded a lot of that information in the architecture document already because, you know, I'm talking about push notifications, about all those things. But there is no consideration, for instance, for things where, you know, you locally store group state encrypted that all for end-to-end encrypted for the group, and then, you know, maybe the key, the ephemeral key to decrypt that for getting the push tokens or whatever is going to be locally.
But all of that is something we want to propose in MIMI.
No, but it's not specific to MIMI. It doesn't have anything to do with MIMI. It's like that's the thing that I'm saying. Like, it doesn't, you know, it's needed for MIMI, but it's not specific to MIMI. It should be an MLS thing. So
okay, but then again, that's not the federation document probably. So you want to specify how to do really privacy preserving delivery service in the MLS working group.
Yes,
and
I mean, I think it should
MIMI
be
reference have MIMI reference that, right?
MIMI will say, you know, this property you can't hold it because you need that functionality, basically. And, you know, so here is how you do it in the context of interoperable things or federation or you know. But like the strongest thing is really related, is like unrelated to me, really. It's like about how do you actually implement a delivery service, implement, like, you know, we do design a delivery service. So I think that should be in the MLS working group, but
yeah, I mean, that's definitely a valid take. The question is, should it be in the federation document? Because it's not specific to federation as such.
Yeah, that's the. Maybe we can think a bit more about it, like, you know. But the federation document will have to say, you know, for federation we need to relax this, right? Basically, because it's not specific to federation. Like, if you are centralized and you have only one, it should have like a best practice, like state-of-the-art privacy. So federation will relax that, and federation across infrastructures, like for MIMI, will even further relax that.
Not necessarily, no. That's not a given at this point.
Yeah, maybe not. Like authentication for sure, but delivery service, I don't know. My intuition is that we still need to actually relax things, but
okay,
yeah.
I mean, I fully agree with you regarding specifying more, but then coming back to the federation document, that's definitely not the place to do it, I think. If it's specific to the delivery service and not particularly specific to federation.
I'm not sure. We'll know for sure when we actually design this thing, but for now it's unclear.
So, I mean, the consensus we had so far in past interims regarding the federation document was that we leave it open for now and we see how MIMI evolves. And so we sort of react to MIMI in that sense. If MIMI covers all of that, then we can abandon that document. If we see that there is some stuff that is not going to be covered by MIMI in that sense, we can have it there.
So there is something that's for sure not going to be covered by MIMI, is the federation of, like, you know, in MIMI, typically the authentication services are from different providers, which is not the case from the federation, from the base case federation document. So I think it's not clear where we should do that. Well, okay, I think we should take that discussion offline.
But I think that the key point here is, if we have a document and you put it in there and then later we go, we need to rip it out, we can do that. Like, so I guess I'd rather not get hung up on the, you know, where it goes. Let's just get the information written down, and if we got to rip it out later, we do that. That might be better because we have this document. And if you're willing to write the text, it helps, right? As opposed to like, hey, Raphael, go off and think about this and write a bunch of text and stick in the document. And he's like, eh. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I might have to fire up ChatGPT then.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll sync offline and we can rediscuss that later anyway.
So yeah, the only question is, should I resubmit it without any content modification?
Yeah. So doing what's called a keep alive version is totally fine. Basically, all you update is the dates and just submit a new version. That's totally fine. Just to keep the draft like available and in the data tracker. So feel free to do that.
Yeah. Do you need to push any magic button since I let it expire, or do I just resubmit?
Nope. Yep.
Okay.
You just resubmit.
Makes sense. I'll do that then.
Excellent. Okie dokie. If that's it, we're about 15 minutes early. I thank you for your time. And I'm looking forward to a very quiet IETF last call. And hopefully we'll be wrapping up. My hope is that if we get done with it, IETF last call and directorates, Richard and Benjamin, if you guys are like kind of not going to disappear for like January, we ought to be able to get through the comments that we'll receive, anything that's discuss worthy. That's where like it's better to get on it early than it is to let it fester, because the ADs will lose state and they will not remember what they said. So if you start seeing discusses that come flying out early before the telechat, when they put it on the after the IETF last call happens, they'll put it on what's called an ISG telechat, which is where they're all going to get down and talk about it. That's where we want to make sure we get discusses, emails in their inboxes before the meeting basically happens, so that and it might actually happen like quick. So I'll let you know when it's going to happen, and it'd be great if we can, respond as quickly as possible, because that smooths the process getting through the process better. Like if you let it fester and it takes 6 months, they're not going to remember what they said, and they're going to re-review the document, and it's just going to be more painful. So, but I'm looking forward to the possibility of wrapping this up in the first quarter, actually getting numbers assigned to these RFCs in the first quarter of 2023. Be nice.
I just wanted to make one sort of note for editors. If you ever rename a document, please make the rename an atomic commit. It just makes life for anybody who has a PR to merge a lot easier.
All righty. Thank you very much. Richard, when you have a chance, shoot me your notes. Conrad, I see that you were going to send me some notes. I think you could see some stuff that I couldn't, which was weird, but I'll get those uploaded. And again, thank you. We'll see you next time. Have a safe and happy set of holidays, whatever it is that you celebrate.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.